The Birth Circle podcast features experts in all the nuanced areas of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum with the aim of helping women make the choices that will keep them safe, healthy, and empowered. We respect all birth choices and believe in supporting informed consent and evidence-based practices. Nothing said on this podcast should be taken as medical advice. You should always seek the advice of a competent professional for your care. Welcome to the Birth Circle podcast.
This is Sarah with Birth Circle, and today I'm joined by Marissa Zwetow. And Marissa she specializes in postpartum, and she's written a book, What to Do When You Love the Kids But Hate the Job. As if motherhood's a job, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't get paid. I don't know who does. Anyway, and we're going to be talking about some taboo postpartum truths. So this is really great if you've heard all of the scary things about postpartum and want to know what's real, what's not, and just some straight up truth, right? She's going to say it how it is.
Absolutely.
So one of the things I love about Marissa is that she wants to validate the experience of the postpartum mom. And there's not judgment. There's just validation and understanding, which is why her book title could have been a little bit more forthright, you said before.
Yeah. If I'm really being honest, it was no bond in the beginning. So love wasn't quite the right word, but I want to sell books and reach moms. So
yeah. Okay. So how did you get your start? What's your history?
Yeah. So I was first and foremost already a licensed therapist, mental health therapist, and was married and planned the pregnancy and, kind of the whole, white picket fence, and we're going to have a baby and this is exciting. And I was older in life, 36 when I had my daughter. And that's kind of significant to my story too. And I think a lot of moms can relate to my journey, being a little bit older, having a taste of success and career. And so what happened is for me, it was just a perfect storm. And for me, it really started with the birth experience. And this was really my first, the real jolt of this whole journey that I don't have control. And I think up until that point, I felt pretty much, confident. I'm taking my Bradley method birth classes and doing everything I want to do, and I feel good. And I think a lot of moms, again, that I've spoken to that are, a little more type A and organized and have a taste of success, and they're going to do their birthing classes, and maybe it's going to be natural and this and that. And boy, just did not go that way at all. And it was, even though it's like logically, we know about C-sections and we know that things can go wrong. We know epidurals are an option, but I'm going to power through it. And anyway, so I had to be induced, and it's like I looked at this birth plan that I had written, and everything on the list just kind of got crossed out. Not as in crossed out done, as in crossed out. Nope, can't do that. Nope. All the way down to wanting the umbilical cord to pulsate for 1 minute as the Bradley method suggests, right? Nope, it was wrapped around her neck, so we got to cut that. It was just like,
everything you planned was just thrown out the window.
Pretty much. So that was the first
and the thing you mentioned, the older, I want to just reiterate that, because when you're young and you just come out of childhood and you're making babies in your early 20s and you're still trying to figure out who you are. And, sometimes we say, well, you were just young and stupid or you were just young and naive, right? But
Perhaps.
Here you're saying you were 36. At that point, you were completely independent. You were an adult grown woman. You had made lots of adulting decisions before.
Yeah. And so they kind of worked out. It was like, I knew if I worked hard, if I studied on that exam, I'm going to get an A. And if I train for that marathon, I'm going to do great. It's not to say that I always was on top of my game. But
there's a big difference in between a 36-year-old mindset and a 22-year-old mindset. Yes. Even the difference between my first child and my last child, and that was only 6 years, but the growth that happens. So you're saying that, despite all of your plans and your professional adulting to that point, things just couldn't have gone more unsmooth.
Yeah. And it just continued to snowball and tank. And what I didn't, I know so much now about mental health for moms, maternal mental health, but what I didn't know then is just, everything just happened so fast. I didn't even take a breath to actually grieve that birth experience, because honestly, it's like I was on to the next challenge. So now it was breastfeeding, and that was disastrous. I didn't produce enough milk. She didn't latch correctly. And my daughter had reflux, which just really translates into colic. And she had a scream that you could hear across a football field. And I wouldn't have known this wasn't normal, but the number of people that commented, including my pediatrician who had been in practice for over 35 years, said, wow.
Right.
So I was like, okay. And that happened right out of the gate. Like, the
You're
golden
just like
hour.
an overachiever in all ways, huh?
Oh, yes.
Go big or go home.
Yeah. So, gosh, I guess the piece I want to throw in there too, that we had mentioned with the title, What to Do When You Love the Kids. But the truth is I didn't have a bond with my daughter. And I don't want to say that was because of the birth experience or the breastfeeding. I don't quite know. I don't think anyone really quite knows what it is when a mom or father bonds immediately or doesn't bond. We know about oxytocin, the chemical, the love drug, but I don't think we know enough. It's not like anyone drew my blood and could have, determined that I didn't produce enough or whatever it was. But bottom line, and I know this is common now, and I didn't know it then, I didn't have a bond with her at all. I felt numb. And then, when the crying and everything going wrong happened, then it was almost like resentment and regret. I mean, if I really had to narrow it down to one word, I felt regret. And that is so taboo. How could a mother feel regret for this baby and giving birth? But I did. I mean, I wanted, if I could go into a time machine, I didn't want harm to myself or to my daughter, thank God, because I know that is a real thing. But I just wanted a time machine, like no harm. Let's just go back in time. Obviously today I don't feel that way.
I know we used to joke that the little hospital bands, it was cutting the tag off and you couldn't take it back at that point.
Yeah.
It's that struggle with commitment issues, that cutting the tag off the ankle was a big deal.
Yeah. So as my journey continued, and again, so I'm already a licensed therapist, so it kind of makes sense that I.
Oh, you were a licensed therapist at that point.
At the time, yeah. At the time,
the irony, and so it's still just piling on you. And why couldn't you pull yourself out of it? Gosh, what is your problem?
I know it's so well. You're just in the thick of it, and you can't see. Here's that's interesting. You say that though.
No, I'm kidding though. I'm 100%.
No, but I did at some point. I kind of resigned to this idea of
the word resign.
Oh, but yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just thought, okay, this must be postpartum depression, because it never got better. And I was embarrassed. I was so embarrassed that I felt this regret and wanted to run away. And I knew about postpartum depression, like any good mom and good therapist, right? But something didn't quite fit. In fact, I remember saying, I don't know that I'm depressed. I just don't like this. And that kind of is the crux of what I do now.
Ooh.
Yeah. However, I want to be clear, it did turn into depression, unfortunately. I wonder if it could have been prevented, but it did turn into depression. And I started kind of, again, saying, okay, maybe this is postpartum depression. I'm going to learn a lot about the PMADs, the mood anxiety disorders, postpartum anxiety, postpartum bipolar, and in the rare cases, postpartum psychosis. But what happened somewhere in that journey, I had a colleague of mine, a psychologist, and she asked me this powerful question. She'd been listening to me share my story, and she's like, I wonder if you really had postpartum depression. And it's like, well, wow, what do you mean? And she nailed it. It was that, why couldn't I just say, this sucks? Why couldn't I just say, I don't like this? I hate this even. And that began my journey of like, wait a minute, like I don't want to negate these real diagnoses and treatment, but I want to add to it. And I want to say, you know what? We don't need to diagnose all these moms who might be just saying, this sucks, I hate it, and I have regret, and I miss my old life. And so that began my journey, and writing my book. And it was my purpose and passion to validate moms. I have all these anonymous mom quotes saying the very thing I felt. Like, I confessed to my husband one night that I felt like we had made a mistake. And it's, it's taboo. And I think a mom reading that would go, oh my gosh, I felt the same way, but I didn't tell anyone, or I kept it to myself. And I wonder, I think to clarify a little bit more, I think there are cases of postpartum depression that really it's the onset. And I do believe hormones and chemical imbalance. I do believe in all of that. I really do. But I don't think the professionals right now are talking about situational postpartum depression, right? I didn't.
What does that mean?
Yeah, so I didn't see that being talked about in the literature. Like, if you look at the definition of postpartum depression, they're going to touch on, the hormones, the chemicals, and yes, situations. But for me, it was no bond, everything going wrong, lack of control. It was situational, the same way that if my husband died, we know that's not a chemical imbalance, that's situational. He died, I'm going to grieve, and it could turn into depression. I felt the same with my baby. But again,
interesting.
Okay,
taboo, so is it the common, right? Is the common belief, though, that postpartum depression is like clinical depression, and it's maybe triggered, it's a chemical event? And you're saying it can start as a situational event that then builds to the chemical event?
I think it's taboo to even imply that having a baby would be comparable to a death or a divorce, right? It is.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm comparing it to a life event that is tragic and jolting, and that's what happened to me. And so that led to my depression. And I want us to, as health professionals and even as moms, I want us to talk about this more. I want us to talk about it more, that it's okay for a mom to not quite, for her world to be jolted. And even to this day, my daughter is 7 years old, and we have a happy ending, and I love her. But I can honestly say I'm not passionate about being a mom, and I didn't know that I wouldn't be. How could I? I had never been one, but that was jarring. As women, I think
there's an expectation.
Yes.
Yeah. And you think, oh, the love hormone, everything just happens naturally. You may have a few bumps, but being a mom is the most satisfying thing.
Thank you.
I really struggled because I worked full time. I worked until the day before my baby was born. I was back to work within 3 or 4 days of the baby being born. I was an event filmmaker, so I could pick my schedule, which means I did this to myself. I would shoot, like, I remember shooting a wedding on my daughter's due date.
Oh,
that was the thing. And being so criticized for wanting this career. And it wasn't until like 3.5 children that I realized I'm a better mom, like as an occupation of motherhood, when I have an outside interest as well.
Yeah.
Like, you put me alone with my kids all day and there's nothing good that's going to happen. I'm just going to resent them. They're not going to like me. The house is going to be like everything. So, but that was fighting against that stigma, or that expectation. 3.5 children.
Yeah.
And even now, once in a while, I get a twinge of guilt, when I have to work a 12-hour day or whatever. And the kids are like, "You're neglecting me." And I'm like, the camping trip we just took 3 days ago. Was that neglect? Stop it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But but when they're little and they're like, and you hear the people say, "Oh, treasure it, because someday you'll look back." Seriously. I do not have toddlers or babies, and I do still not treasure those moments. Yeah. Like, I mean, they were sweet, whatever, I love my babes, but I remember getting so angry when people would say that. And I would say, "What, is that an offer to babysit? Because I'm done right now. I'm done."
It's so invalidating for a mom that is really struggling. It's like, I guess I'm doing it wrong, or something's wrong with me. And that's how I felt. Something must be wrong.
So do you think it would be better if I stay, when I'm an old farty grandma, if I say, instead of saying, "Treasure these moments, they'll be gone," I say, I get it, girlfriend. You're in the trenches. Someday these moments will be
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Yay.
This too shall pass.
Oh, I feel like I'm going so negative, but that's also part of the
Mm.
stigma that you're not allowed to talk about the reality of these thoughts, like how you feel.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and the bottom line, we all have different experiences. There are moms that love it. There are, not all the time, of course, but I didn't love it, and I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know what community I fit in. And now I know, and I want to help other moms navigate that community. So yes, there are moms. What I always say is, look, it's on a spectrum, right?
Yeah.
And there are moms that are way over here saying, I love it. I have baby fever. I want to homeschool. This is the role I'm meant to be.
Yes.
It is the most important role, right? And then if we look at a woman who isn't even on the spectrum and says, look, I don't want kids. To me, I'm like, bravo, good for you. You know what you want. I landed on the spectrum because I had a baby, but I was on the other end, like going, I don't know I don't know if I like this. And I had to reinvent for me what being a mom could look like. That meant for me, I think I only want one, which was jarring. I didn't know that. I thought I wanted 2 or 3. And like you're saying, my career meant something to me more than mothering. So
yeah,
but we're on different places on that spectrum, and that's okay.
I mean, I have 4 kids, and the women that you're saying that have, a ton of kids and the homeschool and that is their thing, I don't actually feel judged by them. So why would somebody even lower, or on the other side, not even lower on the spectrum, it's on the side to side, right? On the other side of the spectrum, who doesn't even want children, why then would they be judged? Where's the line where we start judging?
Oh gosh, I think
so
it's
stupid.
Yeah, I think it's comparison. It's almost impossible not to compare as a mom. I always say, look, if you're going to compare up. And what I mean by that is, if there's a mom feeling guilty that, I see this with, they have one, or, they have their second child maybe, and they feel tremendous guilt that they can't handle it because their neighbor is doing it, or the mom on Facebook is doing it. And I say, look, if you're going to compare, find the mom that has a nanny, full-time nanny, or, compare up.
Well, at least I feed my children.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's funny. Oh, if you're going to have to compare up.
Yeah. Make yourself feel good. Why not? We all have different scenarios. Yes, there's a mom that's doing it one way, but there's another mom doing it another way. Right.
Yeah, or compare and just say, I'm so glad that I found what works for me.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Yeah, because you can be in any part of that spectrum and have tremendous guilt. You can have 9 kids and realize, "Ooh, maybe should have done this," or I'm supposed to be loving this and I don't. Or you can have one child and feel so much guilt. Yeah, so just say, "Well, this is what I get to do, and I'm so glad I figured it out for me."
Exactly. Yeah. And find your tribe. I kind of found a tribe of women that are one and done, and I feel connected, and there's always a tribe.
Wonders.
Yeah.
I always say, like, you can't actually be a real parent until you've had 4 kids.
Ooh.
Because I know why I say that, because I was so judgmental of like how people raise. Oh, you have a picky child. Oh, your child doesn't sleep train. Oh, your child wants this or that, or you can't control this or whatever behavior. By the time I'd had my 4th, I had 4 different types of children that broke me in every single way.
No,
I now do not blame the sleep training parents and the people with, because my big thing was the picky eaters, because I thought, well, all you have to do is expose them and breastfeed and be super encouraging of all different foods. And then my 9-year-old, I think the only thing she eats is cheese sticks and applesauce. So
hey, I would take applesauce. That's awesome.
I own it though. Like, this is my baby. But anyway, no judgment.
Yeah,
I think I could have, if I could have gotten to that place of no judgment with, earlier in the stage of the game, and that
for sure
would have saved myself a lot of angst.
Yep.
Yeah. It's like in the postpartum thing. So how much do you think the postpartum, the is the situational part is comparison.
Oh gosh, I think I was, oh gosh, I hate to use this word. I never have used it before, but like almost groomed to think that it was going to be blissful and magical. You see the movies
Right.
of the moment your child is born and you're in tears. And I had so much expectation and almost fantasy. So when when all of that fell short, I was devastated and confused and shame-ridden. What's wrong with me? Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
a
as far
lot of
as,
yours was external, like
yes,
shame related.
yes.
And what do
Yeah.
you see as a trend in your practice and clients? Is that pretty common that it's external?
Well, I mean, I probably attract a lot of those clients because I'm very, out there with my story.
Mm,
So I think, moms that can relate are going to seek me out. And so, yeah, I attract what I put out there.
yeah,
So I wouldn't be, I'm going to see my trends, but if you speak to another postpartum therapist, they're going to see their trends that are
that's
probably
true.
biased.
That's true. That,
Yeah.
you know what? Yep. That's a great point. So you have taboo postpartum truths, and we've been talking about it, but what are some of the
Yes.
ones we've missed?
Yeah. So I want to actually, let me go back to just the birth experience. I want to validate moms and give permission to kind of process the birth experience if it didn't go the way they thought. There's a lot of, we've talked about this. There's a lot of sayings out there that are very hurtful, and one of them I think would be, "Well, hey, at least your baby's healthy," which is again invalidating. Like, oh, okay, I guess I'm just supposed to be grateful and
I
not
guess I'd be
allowed
validated to be upset if my baby was broken.
to.
That's not even healthier.
Mhm. So I would invite, it's kind of a yes and. Yes, I have a healthy baby. I'm grateful. And I'm so disappointed the birth didn't go the way I wanted. Right. And I want to hold space for that for any mom, just to process the birth experience. So one of the taboo truths is that the birth may not go the way you want, and you can have your disappointment or grief. There's a lot of planning that goes into that, and to have it just kind of squashed, yes, you want to, I mean, look, that doctor cutting the umbilical cord around my daughter's neck, like, yes, do it, please. And I wanted it to pulsate for a minute. I'm still bummed. So
Mhm.
it's okay. They can coexist.
Yeah.
So that would be one of them. Speaking of grief, I guess another one would be, I honestly didn't know I would grieve my old life. I really didn't. I was moving forward, right? Like, I want a baby. I'm pregnant. This is going to be great. I'm excited. This is going to be an addition to my life and to the family. Why would I grieve? And yet there I was grieving my old life, my freedom, my relationship with my husband, having a hot cup of coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
I don't even think I drank coffee in those early days because of the caffeine, but even if it was, whatever it wasn't hot by the time I got to it.
Yes, exactly.
So I guess the truth would be there might be some grief, and that's normal. It's common. It's okay. Yeah, so that would be one of
That's
them.
not even just with the first baby, that's with second, third, fourth babies, because
Oh, yeah,
you
yeah,
just like,
yeah.
oh, I miss just being with this one, or I miss just being with this two. Of course, you can't imagine your life without the new one at that point. And that always surprised me every time I had a baby. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
look at how you belong, but you weren't here a minute ago. And now you are here, and we can't imagine life without you.
yeah.
But I kind of miss it when you weren't here.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, there's the relationship you had with your first or second or third, and that changes everything. Yeah, and so just permission to have all your feelings,
Yeah. Permission to feel all the feels.
all the feels. Yeah. Let me take a look here. I think we kind of talked about this, but the job may suck. And again, we don't know what we don't know. I hadn't met my daughter. I didn't know her personality. I didn't know she was going to scream. I didn't know she was going to have reflux. So um, it's okay. It's okay to seek support. A lot of moms will ask me, how do I know if I have postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety? And I almost I hear kind of what they're going through, and I almost say, let's just not worry about what category or box you fit in. You're not as happy as you wanted to be. You're struggling in some way. Let's get you some support. And I think just struggling with the role of mom or with the temperament of the baby, it's okay to say this sucks, and it's okay to get support. In fact, warranted. Like, please get some support,
Yes, get
some
support.
help. Yep. So I wish I had done that. I was embarrassed, and I just thought, this is temporary. It will get better. And unfortunately it got worse. So
Yeah.
I really acknowledge moms that make that call sooner than later to say, I need some support.
Yeah.
Let me take a look at my taboo truths. I kind of talked about regret. It's okay to feel regret, and it's so taboo. I know that's probably, I say it so freely now, but I'm sure for a lot of new moms, it would be unbearable to say it out loud or to admit it. And yet I just want to give permission that for so many moms, including myself, that are in the thick of it, it's like, what did I do? What did I do? This is not what I thought. I'm not happy. And I don't want, what I say that I validate and give permission for a mom to say, I have regret. I want to lift that shame and embarrassment, but I want to move to solution. I'm very solution focused. I don't want any mom to get stuck there. I'm not in regret anymore. But the reason why I think it's so important to give permission and validate is because I was in so much shame, and that led to even more depression. And if somebody or myself had said, of course you have regret, given everything you were going through, of course you do. You're not alone. This is a valid feeling. Let's talk about it. And then let's look at some solutions. I wish I had hired help. I was stubborn. Probably financially, I felt like, we can't spend the money on that. But now I'm like, that's a good investment. It would have been a damn good investment in my health, in my sanity. So
And probably you haven't talked at all about your partner. How did your husband feel about this whole process?
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't talk about it because I was so self-absorbed in my depression and everything I was feeling. As happens with a lot of moms who struggle, their husbands kind of become the enemy, in all honesty. I just...
Because he couldn't understand.
He couldn't understand. He couldn't do enough. He couldn't do it right. I kind of became a martyr in...
A martyr. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just take the baby. Poor me, but hating him. As I grew and learned about this, I got better at knowing how he could help me, how we could work together, let go of that martyrdom, and allowed him to help more. But if I'm being honest, I was very self-absorbent in my own journey. And let's be honest, the mothers absorb most of it. It's just physically, we have to. We're pregnant, we breastfeed. So
yeah, we bear the bulk of the physical brunt of this experience.
Whether we want to or not. And I'm not at all saying fathers aren't present or don't help, but in those early days, I'm the one recovering physically. I'm the one navigating breastfeeding or even making that decision. I'm not saying moms have to breastfeed, but that's still a decision that they have to bear, and the struggles that may or may not come with it. But I hope I'm doing my husband justice in this question. I'm trying to be honest, but it's like in those early months, it's like, oh wait, I have a husband. He was just kind of in the background. It wasn't good.
Wow.
Yeah. So let's see. Let me take a look. I guess I want to just say too that I would want to remind moms that they're not alone. I honestly didn't find my tribe for a very long time. I know social media can be a bummer, but I advocate for it in the terms of finding your tribe, joining a Facebook group or some type of group that's like postpartum support, new mom support.
And there are so many like niche groups.
Yeah.
So you could have a postpartum VBAC group for moms of triplets.
Yeah.
Like it's
I'm probably, again, I know Facebook has its downfalls, but I'm probably one of their biggest, I don't know, cheerleaders, because I will meet moms and they will have the most unique situation. I'm like, let's just try this out. Let me just type into Facebook this very, one of it wasn't even postpartum. It was a medical diagnosis that I hadn't.
so you take postpartum, the postpartum stress on top of a medical diagnosis.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Oh, fun time.
But I actually put it into Facebook, and sure enough, there was a group she could join and meet her tribe and meet these people. So I would say find your tribe, whether you are homeschooling, whether you are one and done, whatever your situation is, working moms, like you said, the niche of the niche, you will probably find it. And if you don't find it, you need to start the group then. Start it.
Yep.
So I definitely would just say you're not alone, and your tribe is out there.
Yeah.
I think we touched on everything that feels really important. Yeah, we talked about the bond and that it may not be there. Breastfeeding, I guess the myth for me was that it's going to be natural and wonderful and I'm going to love it and do it. And it wasn't. And so I always, when I talk to like these prenatal mom groups, I get invited to kind of speak. I always feel like, gosh, I'm going to preface this with, I might be a little bit of the doom and gloom right now, but I would rather plant a seed and validate, because I was in this bliss bubble when I was pregnant, and maybe I wouldn't have heard it, but it would have been nice to have a mom that just says, look, I get you're excited, but let's just talk about
plant
some of
a seed
things.
that if this happens,
and
not like planting a seed like this will grow, but just letting them know that, hey, if you find yourself in this situation later, you may not understand it right now.
Yeah.
Like it's like telling a 4-year-old when they go to college, when talking about college, and they're like, they're so far removed from the experience. They can't even put, but if you say things like, when, if this happens to you or you find yourself feeling this way, let me know, because then you'll be ready to talk about it. Yeah. And you mentioned this, that it started as kind of some disconnect, some unhappiness that then turned into depression.
Yes.
And then you can actually go further than just depression, and that's where the OCD and the psychosis. So where do you tell the moms to find that line? Where do they, how can you help moms navigate where they really are on that spectrum, and what kind of help they need to get?
Well, here's the interesting thing. So, even though I do get asked, how do I know if I have this? The truth is, though, the treatment ends up kind of looking very similar. So for me, I kind of differentiate. Look, I want to just say this sucks and I'm not happy, but it did turn into depression. And I really should have been on an antidepressant. There's no question about it. I wish I had. I'm a big proponent for it now. So the treatment just ends up looking the same. It's going to be therapy and support, and maybe a support group. And I do bring up medication. Even, I don't contradict myself, but it might sound like I am, because I'm kind of saying it's okay to take out the diagnosis and just say this sucks. But if it does turn into depression, we do need to start talking about what the solutions are. So yeah, I still wear my clinical hat. I still assess, but I'm probably more open and less clinical, especially when a mom says the things that I said, and I just join her and validate her and go, yes, you're not crazy. You may not even fit this mental health diagnosis, but you are allowed to say you're struggling, you're having a hard time, and let's talk about solutions. And depending on where they are, I do introduce the idea of an antidepressant, because I think it can be a real game changer. And to be even more clear, I talked about, death, and if my husband had died, and situational depression. Well, I would hope that I would know that an antidepressant would be an option in that situation too, even though I know it's not a chemical imbalance. I just experienced a loss.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't hesitate in giving somebody help after that type of life shift. So why would we feel so worried about? Yeah.
Yeah. And
Seems,
it's, yeah. And
I feel completely validated right now. I'm just sitting in my validation bubble. I think you're absolutely right. Like anytime something seems weird, I just try and find another life example that feels similar and just like, okay, what would we do in that situation? Now, does this situation make sense?
Yep.
You're right. If your husband had just passed or if you had just experienced a tremendous trauma, we would expect you to be upset and we would expect you to go through the 5 stages of grief and have all sorts of things and give you a break. Why do we not give that to mamas?
Yeah. Well, because we want to, again, because there's that spectrum. And I guess that's the difference, right? Because we can all look at death and all of us can kind of agree, yeah, that's sad. That's grief. That sucks. We don't all feel that way after giving birth. There are the moms that are elated. They are in love. This was the best day of my life, right? And so I'm taking a risk. I mean, I did take a risk when I finally opened my mouth, and I don't remember that moment per se, but when I finally said, I'm not happy. I guess it was my husband, so it wasn't that big of a risk, but I was exposing myself. I'm like, I don't fit that mom I saw on TV. My own mom was happy. She said it was the hardest time of her life having me and my brother, but it was the happiest. It's like, oh, I can't relate to that.
You can't relate to that. Yeah.
So it is a risk, to be honest. And that's why I say taboo truths, right? Because I might have that mom that looks at me confused, like, what do you mean you're not happy? Or they're going to say, oh, you must have postpartum depression. Let's get you diagnosed. And I'm like, don't diagnose me, validate me. Right. And not that woman she wouldn't be the right person, but there would be another mom that say, oh, maybe you have it, maybe you don't. But first and foremost, I just want to validate you.
Validation before diagnosis.
Yeah.
So, do you ever see cases of partner postpartum depression?
I don't personally, but it's real. It's real. I totally would. And there is a psychologist in a city. Well, everything's telehealth now. I don't know why it would matter, but I'd say he's not too far from me locally, and he works with dads. So I might get curious if a father might relate better to another father in terms of therapy and treatment. But if it fell on my doorstep and, he really wanted to work with me, I bet I could do a pretty good job validating him too. But it would be a little different because I'm a woman and the mom. But I personally, it hasn't happened yet, but I would.
But
totally
it's a thing.
Be open.
Yeah,
it is. Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Same thing. Here's a difference I see though. So I think for men, same thing with the bond. Some will bond immediately, some won't. I think in general, we tend to give a little bit of a free pass and say, oh, you're the father, your bond will grow. Whereas women, I didn't.
No mercy, bond immediately.
Mercy. Yeah. But I don't want to take away that a dad might really be struggling.
Yeah.
I remember my brother, he had shared later that he had a second daughter, and he said, I didn't bond with her the way I bonded with my first. And he just said it so casually. I thought, gosh, I was in tears. I was like a puddle with not having that bond. And for him, it just felt like conversation. Like, yeah, I just didn't bond with her. So, but again,
he was being open and validating, just like you, just a little more open and validating than you were ready for.
Yeah. But I was probably hearing his story after the fact. Maybe if I'd caught him on a particular day, maybe he really was in turmoil about it, saying, gosh, what's going on? I'm not bonding.
You don't sound flippant, but we get that you have worked through some serious stuff. So
he was a great point. Yeah. But yeah, it does happen. It does. And I would invite any dad to reach out, whether it's, again, finding their dad tribe or connecting with a therapist. And in some cases, I've heard of actually pretty severe cases of, I guess we'd call it paternal postpartum. Well, I don't know that they call it postpartum depression, but it is.
Well, it's postpartum. I mean, they made the baby too, so it is kind of post their partum, right? I don't know.
But But see, that's interesting. That's the difference. We know that's exactly it. We know with dads that well, actually, that's not entirely true. We know that they have lower testosterone, but I don't know that that links to depression. So
that's a
they're
good
not going to
point.
have,
Chemically, they're changing too.
a little bit. But again, I don't know that that's linked to depression. So for if a dad has depression, we kind of know it is more situational. Than with a mom. I think we really tend to kind of think hormones first and foremost, right?
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong on that, though. I personally haven't done a lot of research with dads and chemicals. But again, there is a reduction of testosterone. We do know that.
Yeah, interesting. Wow, so fascinating. So where do people find your book and more resources, all the resources?
Yeah, thank you. So my brand is Postpartum Happiness. So it's postpartumhappiness.com. On Instagram, it's at Postpartum Happiness, and Facebook, Postpartum Happiness. On my website, I have a link to my book, and it's a very quick read intentionally. It's, let's see, I think it's 58 pages. So it's a quick read. And then I have it on audio, and I think it's an hour and a half listen. So
nice.
But it just gets to the point. And it's just to validate any mom that is struggling with saying, gosh, this is a tough job. And then also the article, 12 Taboo Postpartum Truths, is on my website. You can sign up to get a free copy. It will be emailed.
I see that. Click on free guide, 12 Taboo Postpartum Truths, what you may need to know, but probably haven't been told.
Yeah.
They don't tell us this kind of stuff at the baby shower.
No.
And mom can't remember. And especially grandma. I was like, Grandma, what was it like? Do you remember, being sad after your baby, whatever. She's 94, and she looks at me, she goes,
no,
not really. My children were all such a blessing. And I was like,
Yeah.
She's a tough lady, though. So she remembers the positive.
Well, and again, that doesn't mean she's not telling the truth. Like my mom said, yes, it was hard, but I was so happy. And I completely believe her. And yet for me,
well, my grandma had her babies back when they were doing twilight sleep, where they drug the mom right at birth, and then she'd wake up and there'd be a baby in her arms. Right. And so I had questions about, because she had a hard time breastfeeding too. So I just said, so grandma, of course, I'm just poking at her because I'm this young whippersnapper, and I just want to know what life was like, having babies in the 50s. And she's like, no, I just remember, there was a baby, and I would go to the hospital. And I mean, she speaks about it nonchalantly, and it makes me think, like, am I just like a princess snowflake that I get like bent out of shape if I am not allowed to bond with my baby immediately after birth? And but that was just the norm for them in the 50s.
True.
Okay, Grandma. I mean, it's cool to hear her story, but it's just you wonder, how much of that is our culture nowadays or whatever. But it's just interesting.
Yep.
I know postpartum existed back then. We see it in the symptoms, in the in abuse and abandonment, in marital strife.
Wasn't a name for it then.
Yeah, there wasn't a name for it, right? I remember when I first started Googling postpartum way back in 2000, 2007, when I heard it on Oprah. I couldn't figure out how to spell it. Google didn't even know what it was.
Wow.
That's only 10 years, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So
amazing. Wow.
We're just so enlightened now that Just kidding. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And if you have any questions for Marissa, reach out to her, buy her book on Amazon. Look at her website. Her website is beautiful. You could just click around and just find all this information. And of course, if you have any questions for me or want to reach Marissa through me, you can reach me at media@birthcircle.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
So interesting. Please visit us at birthcircle.com, join our Facebook groups, or find us on Instagram and Pinterest. We hope you'll use our resources to support your birthing experience.